Okay, I have 5:30 according to Verizon time, and I'd like to call the regular meeting to order. Remind you to turn your cell phones to silent or vibrate. We do have our attorney, Christine Stone, online with us tonight, too. Let's all stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our city clerk, Christine Reinhardt, will take the roll.
Councilmember Dalby?
Here.
Councilmember Rowe?
Here.
Councilmember Stevens?
Here.
Councilmember Myers?
Here.
Councilmember Berg?
Here.
Mayor Lazio?
Here.
Items on the consent agenda. Minutes from regular meeting number 6 on February 16th, 2021 as presented. Civil Service Commission eligibility list for February 24th, 2021, firefighter entrance. Approve the purchase of a 2021 Vermeer SC 802 stump grinder for the Parks Department in the amount of $54,775. Resolution number 47, 2021, setting March 16th, 2021 as the date of a public hearing on the disposition of city-owned property described as the south 75 feet of lots 10, 11, and 12 in Block 2 in Manning Second Edition, commonly known as 210 South Van Buren. Resolution number 51, 2021, approving the contract bonds and certificate of insurance for the Johnson Avenue Reconstruction Project. Beer and/or liquor applications for Noe's Bar and Grill at 101 South Madison Avenue, Mad Avenue Quick Shop at 405 South Madison Avenue. All applications pending final inspections.
Move to approve.
Second. Thank you.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Item C on our agenda, need approval for tonight's agenda. Is there such a motion?
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Item D, our administrator's report, so I'd like to call on Phil Rath to give us an update.
Okay. So the two items that I have on here are things that we've been talking about off and on, and just to keep them back in front of the city council, the public, I threw these on here as kind of just an update. There isn't anything that's finalized at this point, but every couple months I just want to have these on here just to serve as a reminder of where we're headed. So with the results from the strategic plan and the council retreat, working on grouping the ongoing things and the new initiatives into 3 to 5 categories of initiatives, grouping those there to see where they all fit, and then having a nice little diagram or visual aid that we can reference much easier and quicker, and then also to see where those things fit within the objectives for the city. Coming out of the comprehensive plan, there were 4 focuses: housing, quality of life / community character, growth, and then celebrating diversity. So trying to fit them within those 4 guiding values, but also there may be some things, there's a lot of what we had in there were financial stability, economic development or growth, that may fit into separate categories as well. I'd look to have a deliverable before council then at next meeting will be pretty busy, so probably the first meeting in April to have something to say vote up and down on. The other item on here is update on the status of the Human Rights Commission. Believe it was in January, kind of reported that thoughts about trying to revitalize that program on a local basis and what that might look like. The mayor and I had been meeting with a number of very interested individuals and seeing how that would look, and looking at getting meetings set up in the near future to, possibly next week to kind of continue those conversations and go through information that was received from other communities and then kind of what I had shared at the meeting in January. The main thing that I want to make sure is that if we're going to reinstitute or revitalize something like the Human Rights Commission, that is important in the community, and especially centering on the movements around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I want to make sure that if we're doing something and putting the city stamp on that we're doing it in a thoughtful manner and something that's going to be sustainable and something that's going to fit with the community and be able to grow from that. So rather than trying to, hit hot and heavy all at once, making sure that we're able to grow into something that will be long-term sustainable. So that is not lost, and there's maybe been some questions as to where things are with that. And we'll continue the meetings and working towards having a presentation to council that will incorporate readopting a group in some manner. So just to give an update there to the council and the public.
Any questions for Phil? Okay, let's move on to item E. We always give citizens a chance to give comments on anything on the agenda early in the meeting, and then we also give them a chance at the end of the meetings. I have two people who would like to address the council, so I'll call them Joe Wilson. Come up and give your name and address and make your comments. And
I'm Joel
Good
Wilson.
evening.
I'm Joel Wilson, 6010 Clifton Road. 5 years ago in this chamber here, this council was given the option to pick between two companies for the FBO. And you guys made the right decision last time. You guys looked at both proposals, and Archangel's proposal was definitely the better one. And I can remember sitting with the mayor, I'm going to say 45 days after Archangel took place working at the airport, and we seen fuel flow explode. And they did exactly what they said they were going to do. And I remember the mayor being very excited about the progression of the airport, which for the city of Ottumwa and for you non-aviation people, the airport's kind of on a point scale. The more IFR flights, flight plans, commercial flights that come into the airport, it's a point system with the FAA. And as the more you get that, then the more important the airport becomes to the FAA, the state of Iowa, et cetera. So you're judged on that. Well, with Archangel increasing the fuel flow with commercial flights, that helped with a lot of budget money and a lot of grant money that came into this community. The FBO working directly with the city hand in hand as a business per se, instead of a city-owned operation, is much better in a lot of ways than ever when you have an owner that can sit there and make decisions and cut deals. The biggest problem I see coming forward with the city running it, not that I see exactly how the decision was made for the direction that they're going. It's completely a mathematical equation, but Sociable Air looked at the FRP supplied by the city and they answered every single question. And there was 5 things on there that the FAA wanted, which was a rental airplane, aircraft sales, maintenance, all those. Well, all those things worked for a Ottumwa Flying Service back in the day. They did. You had Indian Hills that rented 5 airplanes. You needed rental airplanes. When Tom Keck took it over, Indian Hills was also renting airplanes at the time. That business plan doesn't work in Ottumwa anymore because Indian Hills got a new director. They decided to purchase their own aircraft. So aircraft rental business in Ottumwa, if you break it down, the airplane cannot be rented enough by citizens because there's not enough activity for citizens for that airplane to ever be profitable. It could be somewhere in the $9,000 to $10,000 to $12,000 loss every year. But Sociable Air in their bid to answer the RFP correctly included that rental airplane in other words, checked all the boxes for the city to help further along the grant program with the FAA, which skewed the numbers. It would have been a lot easier for them to eliminate all those things that don't make money, like putting a mechanic out there at this point with no with no commerce. Nobody's breaking down the door at the FBO to get their airplane fixed at the Ottumwa Airport. There's no clientele base at the moment. Now, can that be built back up? Absolutely, and it needs to be. But there again, to put a qualified A&P mechanic out there, you're looking at $60 to $70 an hour. Who pays for that? You know. So basically, my biggest concern is Archangel has done a hell of a job. They did every single thing they were supposed to do. They've increased fuel flow to this community and brought money into the community, and they paid their fair share. They had a runway shut down in the middle of it. They made it through it. They've had COVID. They've made it through it. And Connor, who is an incredible gentleman that worked for him, airplanes just don't show up at Ottumwa Airport. I don't know if you understand what a flyover state is, but we are a flyover state. So if I'm in Boston and I have a CEO that needs to go to Phoenix, and I'm a commercial pilot, I have a few things I need to figure out. One, my CEO doesn't want to be in the airplane more than 2 hours. So I'm going to get fuel somewhere in the Midwest. First thing I'm going to look at as a commercial pilot is I'm going to fly to Iowa City or I'm going to fly to Des Moines. Now, when I fly to Des Moines, I'm going to pay $150 to land that airplane. And the fuel cost versus Ottumwa is almost $3 a gallon higher, believe that or not. When Connor and Archangel, their process was to contact a lot of people. They have a lot of clientele that have not been contacted about what the changes are going to be with this community. In other words, you're looking at your fuel flow now, and the RFP had a fuel flow number. The first thing Sociable Air did was go out to Archangel to figure out how they get this fuel flow. What's the process? Because are people just showing up, or what's the process? Well, find out that probably 35 to 40% of the fuel flow is scheduled flights that they have negotiated with NetJets or et cetera. On the board out at Archangel, you would look out there, for example, say March 13th at 2 o'clock, you have a Cessna citation coming in. It's going to need catering. They're going to need ice. The CEO would like to have a courtesy car to go to town. Connor would facilitate all that. And that's exactly what an FBO has to do. It has to be, it's a service industry job. This isn't a Casey's store we're opening here. This is a serious business for the city, for the community. This is the first place that anybody of money or power would come into would be our airport. They need to be greeted by a very professional person. They need to be, all their needs need to be granted, and they need to be sent on their way or whatever we need to do. It needs to be taken very serious. It's a business that has been a sole proprietorship for, I've been to the airport for 35 years. I've seen 2 FBOs and 3 airport managers now. I think after Strunk had it before that. So we're probably going back 45 years that a private individual's run this FBO. This will be the first time the city's run this. I understand where the city came up with the numbers, and I wanted to explain, because Stephen had me look at his bid. You could do 2 things on that bid, and I looked at it very close. You could raise the fuel price on the bid sheet and offset what they needed from the city. You could do that. You could cut out the rental airplane. You could cut out the courtesy car. You could do a lot of things. But the problem is Archangel made it very clear the only reason they were being successful is they were selling their fuel cheaper in this region than anywhere else in the area. So you have to keep the fuel prices low. Skip, if you and I were to come and go and we looked over at BP and it was 40 cents cheaper, you and I are going to BP, even though if we had a friend over there that come and go. I mean, it's all about price. When a major jet flies into Ottumwa and you can save them $400 to $500, no landing fee, and make sure that their catering's taken care of and they get first class service, they're coming back. Now, the biggest problem I have is I don't know, and this is a question, but I don't know that the city ever sat down, or a city official sat down with Connor before he departed about lists, phone numbers, who they're dealing with, who's their clientele. It would be a shame that after all this time with Archangel, that they've spent all this money and created this clientele list that enjoyed coming to the Ottumwa Airport to get the services that were first class, and we lost that. And next,
Okay, I'm going to give you a time limit, so
Okay.
If you want to make a couple more points, go ahead, and then I'm going to cut you off.
Okay. Just basically, I really, really believe that we need to, just like you did 5 years ago, I think this decision needs to be not hurried. I think it needs to be taken very serious to the point where it needs to be left in the private sector. Plus, there was not one full-scale airplane pilot in this community that thought this was a good idea. There was 3 airport advisory members that voted yes for this proposal. I really believe that the city council really needs to take this on a serious note and think plus. And the last thing I'm going to say, the RFP on the back of the RFP, there was a section in there that discussed whatever was on this proposal could be negotiated. And I felt like if the city was worried about what they were going to spend, there should have been benchmarks set in there, a negotiated benchmark that if you get the fuel flow to here, which Sociable Air, I mean, they don't make any money unless they do that, then the subsidies disappear. I felt like that should have been negotiated. There should have been benchmarks to where it was fair for everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joel. Steve Palin.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Steve Palin. I live at 25 Schwartz Drive here in Ottumwa. Been a resident of Ottumwa just about my entire life, other than a couple little stints here and there. Here representing Sociable Air Incorporated. A couple months ago, we were addressed and asked if we would put a bid in at the airport. As a kid, some of you guys have been here a while, know that the residency, we grew up on Final on one of the runways. So my entire life, even as a kid, was with the airport. There's some hidden love there, for lack of a better way to put it. Not just a strip of concrete, as some people might think. Some people don't realize the value of that airport. And the fact that its length is certainly something that people need to take into consideration. And I digress. First off, I forgot to say first and foremost, thank you very much for letting me speak today. I do appreciate that. And I want to thank all the people, especially out at the airport with the advisory board and stuff like that. I know that there's been some things that have been done that I don't necessarily agree with, but at the same time, I do thank everybody for giving their 2 cents. And I believe the ultimate goal of all of us is to better that airport. The question is what path do we take to better that airport? If you talk to any pilot, you grab them and you just call them up. If they're any kind of pilot that travels, they will tell you there is a difference. You can feel it as soon as your airplane is on the ground. A difference between city ran and a privately held FBO. What is the difference? And that's where I started to kind of explain a little bit there. This isn't just an airport. This isn't just a town. This is my town. That's my airport that I grew up by. And there's a love there for that airport. There is an absolute love. I love flying. My wife will tell you I'm kind of a nut job. I mean, even when we're walking around, I'll hear an airplane and I just look up. I love the aviation. I like that. The city has got a proposal. And when we put our bid in our proposal, our only hurdle was to make sure that the advisory board, either they liked us or they didn't. We were liked. They chose us as the ones to come to the council. And on the 16th of last month, you guys had a decision to make whether you liked us or not. Now, we could get into the weeds a little bit, which I really don't want to. But there were some things that were done that were questionable, that I don't necessarily agree with. But again, this is my hometown. This is where I live. I see you people at the grocery stores or at church and places on the street. I don't want to go down that road. I want to go down the positive road. The things that we had a list that we were starting, which we called the 100 promotions. Things that we wanted to do at the airport to not just make it another flyover airport. There's plenty of those. And the idea that a pilot can feel when as soon as they land, the difference between private and government run airports. That's the difference. Now the problem is, because I could go down the list of all the different positive things that we were thinking about doing. But now that we've opened up a door that allowed other people have been offered monies to possibly have employment at the airport. These are people that I was going to rely on to help me run my business out there. At what point now are they no longer part of my positive atmosphere? I mean, if you thought you were going to be getting a job or continuing on with a position at an airport or anywhere, and then all of a sudden somebody took that opportunity away from you, that certainly is an environment that I feel comfortable myself walking into. You're going to see, I think there's going to be some slideshows or something like that, or a PowerPoint, and it's actually going to show my numbers versus the city's numbers. Those two should have never, ever been in battle with each other, ever, not one time. And yet today, those are being brought to you as two separate things that should have never crossed paths. If you wanted me, I was here, I'm here, and I'm going to stay here. And like I said, I could sit up here and complain. There's no reason for that. This is my town. This is where I live. You guys are my friends. We're all here to do the exact same thing. If the city wants to go on ahead and take this, I wish you the best of luck. I don't agree with it. I think government is plenty big. The airport right now has no services. If somebody landed at their airport right now, asked for somebody to put fuel in my airplane, I'm sorry, we don't offer that service right now. If somebody said, hey, can you put my airplane in the hangar overnight? There's nobody to put your airplane in that hangar, sir. I'm sorry. It's unbelievable that that is actually part of this. So I want to make sure that as I leave here today, the most important thing is I'm still here. If you guys decide that, you want to venture off and go down that road and have this be ran by people that it's a clock. They can't wait till 5 o'clock to clock out and go home, and they don't care. I live 2.5 miles from the airport, basically. Somebody called me at 8 o'clock at night. I did call, on a side note, I did call another airport that is city ran, $120 to have them come out and fuel that airplane. I mean, how would you like to know that you're getting ready to drop $300, $400, maybe $500 in fuel in a plane? Oh, by the way, there's another $120 to have somebody come out and fuel it, which is probably the road we're going to be going down and looking at. On the other hand, I would look at that as, let's make sure this individual is as happy as they can be so they can come back here and visit this community again. I do want to make sure that you guys understand that if there is something that we can do with the airport in the future to get it back to the private sector and keep it out of the hands of government, that I think that, I would like to be considered for that. I'd like to have a phone call. If you guys end up deciding today that you don't want to go down that road, I certainly am open to sitting down with anybody and everybody and talking about what we can do to make this a positive move forward without stepping on too many toes, because again, that's not any fun. Nobody likes that environment. So I just hope you understand where I'm coming from, and that is on a positive note. We got a beautiful, beautiful airport north of town. I wanted it to be a spot that people knew about, not just another runway in the Midwest, flyover country. I thank you very much for all your time, and anybody that had efforts in this situation, I certainly thank you for all your time as well.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that wants to talk about anything on the agenda? Okay, we'll move on to item F then.
Discussion on hiring part-time firefighters. Recommendation approval for the Ottumwa Fire Department to hire part-time firefighters.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Good evening, Tony. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members.
I should say Chief Miller, excuse me.
I don't take offense. This is a situation on the part-time thing. I've talked to the city administrator, the finance director, and I've talked to the local 395, which is the firefighters union with the city fire department. There's some fire departments around the state for financial reasons are hiring part-time employees. And Corey Benj and I have went to a couple of these to see exactly how they did it, what's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's where we are right now, is to get the council's approval to start this process of looking into hiring part-time employees for the city fire department. We would keep our 26 staff that we have. what we would do is because our overtime rate, once we lost our 20% of our crew, our overtime bill went really, really high. And we're looking at the financial picture on this, where we're going to be next year, we're going to be in 2 years, we're going to be in 5 years. So this is just a starting point of what we can do different and be better at what we're doing. So that's why I'm here is to get your approval to start the process of seeing if we can implement this policy.
So this is really a discussion. We're not taking any action tonight. And I would encourage you, if there are any questions or comments from the council, this is a time to put them on the floor and give the chief and Corey something to massage and come back with.
Yeah, and that's why we're here.
Yeah.
So point of clarification, the agenda actually reads to approve them to hire the part-time firefighters.
That to approve that, to start the process, the discussion of having this down the road. There could be no decisions made tonight, I don't think, but we're just wanting to start the process, because this is not going to be a process. So we're going to start it next week. We're going to come back and say, hey, this is going to work out. This is exactly how it's going to work. This process, we're looking probably at least 3 months down the road before it would ever take effect.
Yeah, to clarify on that, if everything works out and the city's interested in bringing on part-time firefighters and the membership agrees with that, there will have to be, since there is a contract and there will be wages established and rules and operations on all of that, there will be at least a side letter or a memorandum of understanding or something to that effect to go along with the contract until the point and where that contract is reopened or renegotiated at some point in the future, and then it would be all incorporated into that. So there is work that needs to be done. There will probably be attorney fees, time between Chief Miller, Deputy Chief, myself to look at all of that and see what makes sense. And then a formal proposal brought before the council and the union membership to ratify. So if there isn't any interest in that, there is no reason to proceed.
Tony, could you mention a couple of cities that you've already looked at? I mean, just to get some ideas.
We've made a visit to Urbandale. Urbandale, they have 52 full-time employees. July 1st of this year, they're going to hire 3 additional employees. They keep between 6 and 10 part-time employees, or they have on a regular basis. We've had one of our firefighters recently go up there. He was part-time up there, and he recently took a full-time position up there within the last 3 or 4 weeks. That's one of our fire guys we lost. I found out this morning that one of our firefighters is going to resign. He has accepted a job offer with Johnston Grimes, who also has part-time employees. He's been a part-time employee up there for probably over a year now. And they had a situation where they offered him the job yesterday. He accepted this morning.
If I may, Mayor, I agree with Mark. I don't intend to vote on this because it does say approval for them to hire. My second question, though, Tony, is with discussion and with your recommendation eventually to go to this, one of the concerns about why the little trucks haven't been used so much is you've mentioned to me personally that reduction in staff doesn't allow you to man it. If you had the ability to fill a position, like because you have vacation and you wouldn't have 4, could you then use that part-time, could you bring the part-time people in to make it so that you'd have adequate staff?
What our plan on, that's a great question, Bob, by the way. What our plan is we're going to, when we get down below the minimum of 6, because we have, every day we have 3 people at each station, is if we get down below 6, we're going to bring a part-time person in to bring us back up to 6. It's not going to be 7 or 8. It's not going to be that. It'll bring them back to our minimum, what we need to run the fire department.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So quick question, more in line with the architecture of this plan. How many days now are you operating where you're bringing somebody in on overtime to meet that 6-person minimum?
We're under a very unusual situation right now. One of our green crew has lost one person to another department. We just lost a second person off the green crew to another department, and we have a third person on the green crew that has an on-the-job injury where he had a pretty serious medical condition on a fire call we had recently. So we have an 8-person crew. We have 3 people off the same crew right now. It takes us down to 5 every single day they work. We're calling in overtime on that crew every day. This time of year, we don't call a lot of overtime in right now for the same reason as we're up to 8 people normally, but people are still taking time off to bring us down to 6.
So how many hours a week do you anticipate that you'll have in part-time labor?
I can tell you what the Mother Johnson Grimes, what Urbandale does, and what they do is they schedule their people out a month ahead of time. We're looking, the ultimate goal is reduce overtime costs, and this will definitely reduce the overtime costs because when we start these people out, we're going to be paying between $15 and $17 an hour. Our overtime costs are about at least twice that. So this is where the big cost savings is going to come. And I can tell you some of our guys that have went to other fire departments have already said it's kind of an unusual situation that there's not a residency requirement that the fire departments are going to. So they live in Ottumwa, can continue to live in Ottumwa, and they've already said that they would definitely work part-time hours here, even though they're going to be at other departments.
So maybe the most important question to me to ask anyway, what's the flavor of this situation with the union?
We've already talked to the union guys about this. We have a meeting at 2:00 tomorrow afternoon where we're going to start the process. We're here tonight so I can get the council. Does the council want us to move forward with this, or is this a dead issue? If you guys vote to go ahead with this, we're going to have our first meeting at 2:00 tomorrow. I think if it's brought in right, I think they'll accept this. But it's going to be a lot of negotiations, a lot of contact, a lot of information, communications. The good thing is we've already been to 2 other departments. Waukees, the 3rd department's going to start doing part-time employees too. They started about 3 weeks ago. They announced they're going to start hiring part-time employees also. So we're going to bring all the information that we can possibly bring, talk to the union guys about this and say, here's what this is all about.
You mentioned one word that I found interesting. You said right. What do you mean by done right?
We want, 6 months down the road, there's not a grievance file like, well, wait a minute, this is how this was supposed to work out and this didn't work out like that. As much stuff as we can get ironed out prior to ever signing anything on both sides. Both sides are going to be better off. And I've been around a while, and I've been on both sides of the table negotiating for the city and on the union side. I think we can get this thing hammered out so everybody will be, they're not going to be extremely happy, but it'll be very doable for both sides.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? I would pose to the council that we might want to amend that motion that says approval. Maybe it should just say explore the opportunity for the fire department to consider part-time employment. That's what you're really doing.
Pretty much, yeah. Just getting okay to move forward with it.
Change
I
hire
would
to
offer
consider.
that amendment as you stated it, Mayor.
I'd second that.
Chris, can you give us a reasonable amendment there?
Right now on the spot. Oh, boy.
Sorry.
Exactly how you said it. Explore opportunity for fire department to
Consider hiring.
research and develop a plan to hire part-time employment.
That sounds very good.
Does that sound good?
That should cover everything, yes. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll vote on the motion, the amendment first, which is to just what Chris said. So let's take the roll on that.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
So now the motion would be that we're going to allow the fire department to explore, research and explore hiring part-time people. So take the roll for that.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll look forward to having you come back and give us some information and updates, and council can be feeding information to you too.
I will make sure the communication goes to all council members since they're going to have the final say.
Okay, thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.
Discussion on selling both 2010 Chevy Rescue Squad trucks from the Ottumwa Fire Department fleet. Recommendation approval for the Ottumwa Fire Department to sell both 2010 Chevy Rescue Squad trucks from their fleet inventory.
Is there any motion? I think we have the same problem.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Tony, you have the floor.
Thank you. I've came to council meetings before about this issue. What our plan is we have 6 people working every single day at the fire station. The squads 10 years ago was absolutely fantastic for our department. They did us a very good job for all these years. We're at the point now where if we get out on a call, on a medical call, in 2020, we ran 4,027 calls. So we do a lot of runs. Is we don't want to get stuck out with a fire coming in, because we still have a lot of fires in Ottumwa. And my concern is that we're going to get out there on the medical call, have a structure fire come in, have to go back to the fire station and pick up a fire truck and take the squads back. And that's a real concern to me, because, the first couple of minutes of the fire is the most serious time of fire, because it can build that quick. If we have a fire truck and sell the squads, right now we can get more out of the squads than we're ever going to get out. 2 weeks ago, we had a company come in and do an evaluation on the squads, and I think you guys have all the paperwork on that. One was worth between 30 and 35,000, where the other squad was 40 to 45,000. That's what we can get out of them right now. If we're going to sell them and go this route, now would be the time to sell them. We're going to get the most money out of them. March 17th, we're going to get the new trucks that come to the fire station. So in about 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we're going to have the new truck that we got, that demo truck. Will be delivered that day.
Okay, are there questions for Tony or comments from the council or staff?
Your Honor, I have a quick question. Tony, could you run for the point of public clarification, how you guys operate and how you use those versus how now going back to using the trucks as basically the primary vehicle for responding to those calls? How does it work with the number of firefighters you got? Because I've heard a lot before, we're using the big trucks too much. That's why we had the squads. That's why we bought those, right? And so if we're going back to that, we're back to the same. So can you explain to us how that would work?
I can do that. When we had 10-person crews, we had a minimum of 7 people. So we'd have 7 people working every single day. What that did was we would have 2 people. We'd run 3 vehicles. We'd have 3 people on 1, 2, and 2. We'd run 3 vehicles at the time, which means we was running a squad at the time. We have a medical call, you have 1 squad go out. You have a second medical call, you have a second squad go out. You have a third call, medical or fire, we'd have a fire truck we'd take to it. When we cut down to 6 people, that gives us 3 people on each truck. So we can't run 3 trucks because we don't have the manpower to do that. So that's pretty much in a quick case of why we did that, what we did.
Would there ever be a point, you think, in the future where if we, did approve part-time firefighters, I don't want to see, and I think some of the other council members had an issue with this too, seeing a point where if we use part-time firefighters to supplement the crews and we get enough to, run the medical calls using the squad, so we sell them now. What if, we're in a lot of uncharted territory on how this is all going to work out, a lot of what ifs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a little hesitant to sell the squads now because of their purpose. And will we get back to a level hiring part-time firefighters possibly that we would still need to use those or be able to use those without using the big trucks? Or is that not?
What the plan is right now, the plan we're going to address with the union beginning at 2 o'clock tomorrow is we're going to, anytime we drop below 6 people, to bring it up to 6 people, which means we're still going to be in the problem where we're going to have not the extra manpower to run the third vehicle. AFG grants, we wrote an AFG grant 2 years ago for a fire truck. AFG grants for career departments very rarely ever happens. Now, one thing we can do next year, we was going to do it this year, but it's been pushed back a year, is we can write a SAFER grant. A SAFER grant now will pay for the entire costs and benefits of the firefighters for 2 to 3 years. Every year it changes a little bit. So depending next year what what the rules are, we can write a safer grant, and I would think we'd be having halfway decent chance of getting one for what's happening in our city. And they pay all the costs right off. The first year or 2 years, they pay all the costs and benefits. So if we do that, we get additional people, then we can run a third. We can bring it back up if we bring the manpower back up.
Right.
If I may, were you finished, man?
Yes. Yes.
So, Tony, a little humor here first. You mentioned the new fire truck apparatus coming in. So I might have at a meeting suggested that maybe fire trucks, we don't need all the bells and whistles. So since that time, one of your firemen was so kind to present me with a little whistle and a bracelet of bells. I have to give that back to you because our city attorney might have indicated those were too expensive. Now, that being said, Tony, getting serious then.
Yes.
Back to the two fire trucks.
Yes.
I was pleased to see one of the trucks out yesterday. So apparently, one of the smaller trucks. So apparently we had the numbers to allow that yesterday. Now, in looking at our packet at the identification for the trucks, at the two small trucks, one of them has 49,000 plus miles on it, the other one 40,000 plus. So I happen to have been on the council, Matt, 10 years ago when we purchased those.
2000, they were 2010, yes.
Looking at your description in here, they've got a lot of neat bells and whistles. I mean, those aren't just pickup trucks. Those have foam, they have chemical, they have a lot of neat things.
Yes.
And so I was curious too, why would we get rid of them at this time? Understanding what you're saying, the price, the longer you keep something, the less the value. But those are good trucks. And then I guess even if we were, why not just one? And why wouldn't we keep one? So,
Well, that's why it's coming to council tonight, just because you guys have final say. But like I said, we're still going to be to the point where we're going to have 6 people working every day. Even if we write the safer grant next year, you're still a year and a half or year and 3/4 away of getting that grant. The process we're in right now is we have 3 people at the station each day. That I don't foresee that changing anytime soon for a while, for at least a year and a half at the very earliest.
how did we use the little one yesterday?
We had people come in. We did some training up on one of the houses that's going to be taken down. So we had extra people in there. That's why they brought the truck with them.
Okay.
But on a normal day, Bob, we don't. That truck just sits there.
And with the part-time, if the part-time plan goes through, wouldn't that increase the number of people?
We're still going to have 6 people per day. That's not that number. I don't foresee changing anytime soon.
Thank you.
Chief, in the last 6 months, because I'm assuming that you've been on the 3-person cruise for the last 6 months since the budget cycle, how many miles have you put on those 2 vehicles in that period of time?
I don't have that on the top of my head. I put in the 2020 report, which I'm going to be done with tomorrow, and you guys are going to have that. I can tell you what the mileage was from last year until this year. I can get that information for you tomorrow. I will text you that information.
But do you suspect that it's been a lot or just a trivial
I'm
amount?
going to guess it's 3,000 to 4,000 miles is my guess.
On each vehicle?
Yes. But I'll get you that information. I really don't know.
Tony, have we ever done an audit of our calls at the fire station and separated medical, fire, emergency, and educational? I'll just use that term. But
That's been in the annual report for the last 3 years I've done one. I'm finishing this up tomorrow, and it'll be in that information is in there also.
I'm just wondering how many times we've had both calls where we are having fire and emergency medical at the same time and have to have obviously 2 vehicles.
Could I ask Kayla a quick question?
Sure.
Aside from immediate cash flow, is there any financial advantage to getting rid of these vehicles right now, or is it something that could be postponed until some other studies have been done?
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely postpone it if you guys feel more comfortable with that.
I got a quick follow-up question, Chief. You run the fire department, and we take recommendations from staff. So basically, what's your recommendation? If future-wise, we don't anticipate any more than the shift minimum on any given day because of, vacations and injuries and stuff like that, what would your recommendation be to us? I mean, we can make the decision, but I would much rather have your opinion, your recommendation. I know here it's to sell them is the recommendation we have, but is that your personal recommendation? Is that what you're thinking we should do?
Matt, that's a great question, and that's exactly what I think. I think these things, and then when they came in 10 years ago, they did our department fantastic. They did a great job. We don't have that luxury right now where we can use them trucks on a consistent basis like we did. One's got 49,000 miles on it. The other one's got 40,000 miles on it. That's in a 10-year period. I think we need to sell them. We had one of our local laboring fire departments wants to buy one of them already. Sell them is not going to be an issue. That's why we brought a person come in and say, hey, how much are these things worth?
Mm-hmm.
But personally, I think, I don't see our manpower coming back. We're going to have 3 people working on each station every day. These trucks are going to sit there for a long, long time.
And even if we did get the manpower in the future, we're talking a time in the future to where those trucks will have devalued even farther. There would be probably not much, cash value to them, and then we'd really be at a lose-lose situation. That's kind of what we're getting presented with tonight, right?
Pretty much. And that's why we had them evaluated, Matt, because when somebody asked me how many of these trucks are working, I'm like, I have no idea. They could be 20,000, they could be 3,000. I have no idea. We had a person come over and evaluate, and he said what this is worth. And this guy is in the business of selling used fire trucks, so he knows, and that's where we are. But personally, I'm thinking if we would use these things again, I say keep them, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. Now's the time to sell them while we get the most out of them.
Thank you.
So you had enough time for questions and comments? Any other discussion, any other questions for Chief Miller?
Excuse me, if nobody else has, I still think, boy, keep the lower mileage, keep the 40,000. That truck could enhance anytime you had a major situation. That truck could be very useful. And you wouldn't replace it, Tony, for under 100,000, would you?
No, that truck, when they bought them trucks, it was 175,000.
175.
10
And
years,
was
yeah,
the
10 years ago.
estimate on the one with the low mileage, we could maybe get 40 to 45,000 out of it.
The one with the low mileage is 40 to 45,000, and the other truck is between 30 and 35,000.
So council, I sure would suggest we hang on to one at least, but I mean, I know that's not the motion, but I could sure offer that as an
You can amend it.
amendment.
So if we didn't use it, would it sit idle somewhere and be stored, or obviously clear up a bay there, or what would we do with the truck? Say we kept one.
We would keep it right where it's at. We would keep it at the north station. Because there's one of them trucks at each station, and we'd keep the low mileage one at the station, just leave it there until we use it.
Mayor, I would sure offer an amendment that we allow the selling of the higher mileage, but retain for now the 40,000 mile truck.
I would second that.
Okay. So really what we're just saying is approve the fire department to sell one truck.
Yes.
The high mileage truck.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so motion's made and seconded. Ready to vote on that? Take the roll, please.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Thank you.
Go back to the original. So the motion now is that we are going to sell the high mileage truck and keep the other one. Matt and Holly got credit for that, so take the roll.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Thank you, and thank you, Chief.
Request to reject proposals received for RFP for fixed-based operator services and proceed with assuming as a municipal operation. Recommendation, reject all proposals received for RFP for fixed-based operator services at the Ottumwa Regional Airport and proceed with assuming the operations internally.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And I think we'll call on Phil for that. Okay.
All right, so as the staff summary recalls there, on January 5th, 2021, City Council authorized staff to proceed with the resolicitation of proposals for a successor contract for the fixed base operator services. Based upon the receipt of a single proposal at the much higher cost than anticipated in the initial process, city staff was examining the possibility of assuming the operations internally. Second time around, city did receive 2 proposals. However, there was still a general concern that neither would be financially sustainable long-term. Of the 2 proposals, the airport board has recommended that of Sociable Air. The proposed cost of the airport for that proposal was $63,850 per year, assuming a new agreement or revised agreement with Musco. City staff's confident the operation could be absorbed into the structure of the city, which would provide greater flexibility for the long-term financial sustainability. I think, is that? Okay. All right. So yesterday, had a special meeting with the airport board to kind of go over some of the thoughts with city staff that weren't fully vetted at the last airport board meeting. Just want to say, yeah, if you want to hit the. Okay, so the Ottumwa Regional Airport is a publicly owned airport. And so the perspective of the remainder of this proposal and what was given yesterday at the airport board meeting is solely looking at the overall costs to the city, the revenues and expenditures in its, bless you. In its entirety. So it does incorporate aspects of the proposal from Sociable Air and also looking at what the implications might be for the city. So to add staff, to add the services, the costs associated with that, and potential revenues on both sides. Traditionally, as was stated, the city has contracted the services of a fixed base operator or an FBO, similar to Venue Works at BVC or currently the municipal golf course. The FBO is only one aspect of the overall operation of the airport. The city has entered into 2 distinct proposal processes in an effort to identify the cost-effective solution to continue the operation. So the RFP process does not commit the city to award a contract to any potential proposal. The city does reserve the right to accept or reject any or all proposals and reserves the right to accept any proposal if the action is believed to be in the best interest of the city. Based on those criteria and the proposals that were presented, city staff was concerned about the financial sustainability of the previous proposals and the overall impact on the future service availability at the airport versus an increased tax levy. In other words, would the city be able to maintain services at any foreseeable level? And to do such, would that mean an increase in tax levy to be able to perform those services? So right here is a reflection of the projected revenues. So the green line there is looking at the contracted FBO, I'm sorry, the expenses, and the gold orange line is what it would look like for the city to assume those responsibilities. There will be additional cost to the city to do that. There will be staff that would be hired. There will be additional costs for operations, supplies, those kinds of things. And so that was looking at, again, under contracted, there was the operational support of the contract and a potential offset of the agreement with Musco, and in cost of living adjustments, personnel and non-personnel costs. The city would still have the same COLA adjustments for personnel and non-personnel, and the other things that we would take on: additional personnel, supplies, operations, and fixed assets. Those are reflected in the expenditures. Now, along with that then is looking at is it next slide up? The revenues. Yep. So the revenues under the contracted, we would get the operational support that was identified in a contract and fuel flowage, which was currently at 12 cents per gallon. The offset there is the city, if we have the operations, would overtake the hangar rentals that are ongoing. Rather than 12 cents a gallon, the difference in fuel sales, purchase price versus sale price, and in looking at maintenance program. And so one of the things that with bringing on the staff is looking at getting that maintenance program established and partnering with Indian Hills, for example, to oversee the maintenance program that they have, bringing in some, early revenue and operations, but also being able to build that program from there, hopefully fairly quickly. So the concern, as you can see, revenue is growing faster for the city under that operation. Looking at projected net increase and decrease. And this was one of the main concerns. Again, the gold or orange color is looking at the city projections. We can see that it does, both of them do have a negative. Looking at the city with the offset of revenue, it does appear to be a little bit less. And then over time, it is decreasing. And in that last year, should hopefully provide a increase in that net increase or the net projected net. And the last slide here is looking at what that does over time. And as you can see, again, that orange line does not hopefully get to the zero, but as you can see over the long time there, eventually does start to bottom out and curve up. And unless there's anything done differently, the contract is just going to decrease. And the biggest part of that is the opportunity for revenue. And under that city structure, I think there is more opportunity there. I've worked with other airports before and municipally trying to raise a levy for airports. And that is a very tall order when you try to go to the public and ask for financial support offsetting the operations of an airport. Now, I personally see an airport as an economic development driver, as an engine for the city, and I think that all of that is very beneficial. Unfortunately, sometimes airports get a negative rub as being a place for boys with toys, and that makes it very hard to get any revenue taxes to help offset that. That is one of my big fears long term. A couple years in, we may be at a point where the city's not able to maintain an FBO out there at all. And if that becomes the case, that will really decrease the amount of services. No question that, when you have a private interest and, dollars and cents on the line, they have a lot of drive and ingenuity and passion. They're going to put everything they can into that. You may not see that always in a publicly run entity, but we have a number of services that run 24/7. Police and fire, for one thing, they punch a clock too, but they do it around the schedules that are assigned. Public Works with snow removal and other things, they're out there all hours of the night as well. So I think if you have the right mentality and you hire the right people, you'll get the desired results that you're looking at, whether that's public or private. And I would support the recommendation of looking at this on the long haul and trying to make something that will be sustainable over that period of time.
Okay, questions for Phil or Kayla or?
I have one question, Mayor.
Go ahead.
I
Yep.
can't tell what that last number is on your graph. How many years out is that?
I believe that was 6 years out.
6 years out?
Yes.
Looking at ending June 30th of 2026.
Thank you.
Mayor, I guess I have a few questions. I was really impressed with Mr. Palin's passionate expression of what he thought he was trying to provide, and Mr. Wilson's comments too. And then I go back to a concern I have as far as the city and business managing and so forth. And nothing against the personnel out at the airport, but if we went with our municipal, we're hiring 2.5, potentially more city employees. We already have 2.5 at times out there that I wonder at times why. And And you mentioned, Mr. Rath, snow removal and so forth and so on. So I don't know in Mr. Palin's proposal, was snow removal any part of the discussion, or is that always something that the city is responsible for? Or?
Yeah, so there have been, the city side of things and the FBO have been operating separately previously. And part of that was because of the way the nature of the agreement. So the runways and some of the other areas were taken care of by the city and city staff. And then there were other parts of the airport that were taken care of by the FBO.
Okay.
So it was both sides that were doing that. And that is one of the hopefully benefits also of looking at bringing this internally and having those services be able to be under one direction. There is that, like you said, there may be some questions as to what the staff is doing on a daily basis. There will be the ability to leverage those resources across the whole airport then, instead of city FBO.
Okay, I had two other parts, Counselor, excuse me. But one other part was when Mr. Palin mentioned the courtesy car. So with the city's proposal, did that include a courtesy car?
Yeah, we would still have the courtesy car and other features like that.
Okay, and then to the other point, so is the airport closed right now?
So we have a NOTAM that says that we do not have FBO services at the airport. So planes could still come and go, and I believe there is still self-service aspects for fuel that are available, but there would not be what people were used to, say a week ago, is not available.
Thank you. Other questions, comments?
Yes, comment wise, Phil, I appreciate all your guys' hard work, obviously, on trying to look at what's best financially for the city. But like you said, economic development is something that we talk about a lot. And I think that ensuring that the best foot forward for our community starts at the airport with a lot of the projects of which we're doing. And so that gives me pause for concern when we're looking at the hospitality aspects of running an airport. We know we got a lot of things on a city side that we do every day that I want to make sure, or I guess my concern is that we might drop some of that by trying to operate the airport as well. And obviously we're looking at financial projections here, but not knowing how the city would invest in marketing to improve the usage of the airport. Obviously, we have a Convention and Visitors Bureau, but they're not experts. For as much as Andy does, he is not an expert on airport marketing in of itself. So I guess I have a lot of concern on how the city operating it would be able to grow usage of the airport without having people who are experts in that field to do so.
So that's one of the things that we're working on initially with this and didn't have everything lined up in those regards. And one of those is hiring somebody who is, I guess I'd call an expert in the aviation field and I believe respected amongst pilots and others out at the airport. And that was looking at hiring a Duke Ball to help facilitate and run the operations out at the airport. And that would also be providing the maintenance right there, partnering with Indian Hills to take over the maintenance aspect of that, which should help to service the baseline and grow out the maintenance aspect. And from my understanding and talking with people in the aviation world, having a trusted place where you can get maintenance done will be just as much, if not more of a draw as fuel price. And now that's not saying that we're going to jack up fuel prices or anything else. That wouldn't make sense, for, the short term versus long term of things as well. But you will see some benefit from the fuel sales. Rather than 12 cents, you might get, $1 or 80 cents or $1.50 or whatever it might be coming in per gallon sold there as well. So, I mean, you're looking at if you take out the Musco aspect and just look at the $63,000 deficit there, by my projections, at 12 cents a gallon, we'd have to sell over 500,000 gallons of fuel over what we're currently selling to make up that difference in revenue that's coming into the city. An offset would be looking at, a 15 or 20 cent tax rate to help offset some of those costs there.
Phil, I would just add a comment basically from what I've seen so far on the presentation. I too would rather see things like an FBO, golf courses, those types of things remain in the private hands. I mean, it's just simply less that we have to worry about. But from what I gather from the presentation is I don't think our citizens really have an appetite for another levy or an increase. And as much as I hate to say it, like I said, I'd rather see it be in private hands. The financials don't quite add up on the contracted side, although like I said, I prefer us not being in that business. But so I guess at this point, my comment and opinion would be, we got to do what's, in the makes best financial sense for the city. And that doesn't mean in the future that we can't expand or go private once things iron out. I think we're way too early in the game to start, staking a future and how we think it's going to go, how we think it's going to develop. We've done that before, and we're still where we're at now. And I think unfortunately, this is the government route, but it seems to be the safe route for now. But hopefully we'd leave our options open. As time goes on, we see how this goes, possibly in the future, hopefully, we can expand enough to where it does fall back into the private hands. And I know we've got interested parties that would be available to look into it again, but just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and that's always been my goal in my career is continuous improvement. And in order to do that, sometimes we do have to try things different than the way we've always done it. There's the whole quotation about definition of insanity and doing the same thing and expecting different results. And sometimes you got to try something different. And, if it doesn't have the desired effect, we look at the next thing or tweaking it a little bit and reverting back, whatever that might be. But I think this is our best path forward based on the discussions I've had with the personnel, with the partnerships that we can sustain. And I think community-wise, this is the best route at this time.
And just a quick question, I don't want to cut anybody else off. When we talk about expenses, hiring a person, paying a salary, maybe possibly up to 2, whatever the future holds, in those projections, you have the airport fund balance being able to cover that rather than fall back on either A, a levy, or B, general fund subsidy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did try to use conservative estimates in there, adding in costs for personnel, for additional operational expense, supplies, capital equipment, all of those things we're looking at and looking at that, the net and cash balance over time.
Councilman Delby, I think that's a really good point. The airport has been, in the past number of years, self-sufficient and supported itself. And there's been some misunderstanding in the public that it's being funded by the general fund, and it's not. I think sometimes fund accounting gets a little confusing, and people think it's like home. You can put all your money in one checking account and do whatever you want, and we can't do that. So looking at the airport reserve fund is certainly an important issue. And again, we're trying to make some tough decisions just like you did about a year ago, and do the best we can under the circumstances. Are there other comments or questions?
I've got a few.
Go ahead.
So I had the pleasure of talking to Kayla about this, at least the financial aspect, at some length today. And at least from a financial perspective, it seems that this makes sense, but I do have a couple of questions, and I warned Kayla that I'd probably have more. So, looking out 2023-ish, our cash balance will be down to about $13,000 according to that cash flow projection. And, from what Kayla had mentioned right out of the gate, we're at about $237,000, and we push out about $140,000 out of the gate just on capital asset expenditures. So I understand that it's a conservative estimate on the revenue. But my question is what's the plan for that one catastrophic event that happens, because we only have $13,000 by your projections?
Was it a question to me or?
Either one of you.
I mean, from the capital aspect, we always could do it for a CIP to extend it out instead of just paying it out of the cash balance of the airport fund. So that could give us some relief if we would like to do the capital purchase that way with the CIP instead of just pay for it with the cash out of the balance.
Okay. And my next question, and this maybe goes back to what Councilperson Berg had mentioned. We always have the best laid plans for what the future looks like. I'm concerned as well because, one of the things that we've talked about in the last two comprehensive plans is the airport being the diamond in the rough, being one of the biggest economic drivers that we have in not only this community, but this region. And I think that Mr. Palin does have a point in the fact that, we need to be able to market appropriately. We need to have someone out there that cares. And having people that are just there for a 9-to-5 job is a concern. And I'm not in a position to know what the expertise of the person that you're looking at has. I'm sure he's a fantastic pilot. I'm sure he's a fantastic manager, and I'm sure he's a fantastic mechanic. But I would question, because nobody has mentioned his marketing ability. Nobody has mentioned his customer service ability, which, quite honestly, for being in that position are two equally important things. Because going back to when we made the decision to move away from Ottumwa flying service, that was one of the biggest things that drove us away from Ottumwa flying service, was the fact that the customer service out there, according to the pilots that were visiting, was questionable. So I'm concerned that if we don't have that aspect of the operation there, that we run the risk of being in this exact same position, not 5 years, not 4 years, but 3 years, because nobody wants to come to Ottumwa because we have poor customer service, or, we don't have a marketing plan, whatever the case may be. So I guess where I'm going with all of that is, we have talked at length over the last few weeks about the financial situation, but what is the 5-year plan for making sure that there's sustainability for the airport? Because I wouldn't start a new business without looking at every aspect of it and having everything laid out up front. I mean, obviously the financial piece of it would be really important, but before I went into that venture, I'd want to know every aspect of it, not just the financial piece. So I guess extremely long-winded way to say, what is the city's plan to market the airport and move forward? Not just making sure we have cash in the bank, but what is the real plan to make sure that airport is successful? Because I don't really want to be back here in 3 years making this decision all over again.
So I'd say a big part of that is definitely bringing on the right people and making sure that we're fulfilling the customer service. I sat through a couple of the proposal presentations and even a couple of things where people didn't in the end put in a proposal, but had presented a number of ideas and topics and things that enhance the pilot experience. And so, working what we can to do those things, having the ability to do maintenance out there right away, and having that, be from, I'll say, nearly day one, I think is a big draw in helping with building that base out at the airport. Having the ability to do flight instruction almost right away is an asset, and marketing that to grow the base of people that can fly And this is, as was described yesterday at the airport meeting, these are more of the recreational pilots, those that are working to get their licenses over time, not because they want to fly a commercial jet or anything to that degree, but they want to be able to have that. I sat down with Sharon Stroh from GoPip today, and a few years back, there was some infrastructure put in to be able to build 3 new hangars out there. Not one has been built off of that development before. So looking at ways that we can enhance all of that and be able to advertise and market the airport and all that, the services that we have. When we went into this process back last fall, even I'll say last summer, there was questions and comments about the ability of the current services with Archangel and what they were able to provide, compared to what was in the agreement. Even early on, it was meeting with Mr. Keck and saying, identifying some of the concerns about being able to provide all those things at the rate that was there, which was basically a zero net. And the city wasn't contributing anything additional beyond the revenues that were coming in from the hangars, and then the offset for rent that they were paying is all part of the agreement. And so the airport board met and they said, no, we want to have all of these services. And it was an option to renew that, a very cordial discussion and saying, yeah, this isn't something we're going to be able to do. And so tried to put out an RFP that was incorporating all the things that the airport wanted to be able to expand and attract and develop out there. And you saw we had the one proposal, and it was pretty astounding as far as the price that was there. Obviously, there was no choice but to reject that one at that time. Reissued, tried to loosen that a little bit, give some opportunity to say, okay, yeah, here's the things we'd like. What can you provide? What is that going to cost? And we received the 2 proposals back. As was mentioned earlier by Mr. Olson, as far as, there's some things that could be negotiated. We could not have the rental plane, or we could not have X, Y, or Z, but that wasn't the basic direction we were getting from the airport board. With the city proposal, it's looking to provide some of those things almost immediately, and I think that is going to speak for itself. And the reputation, as I understand, with Duke is very well respected. So the current pilots that are out there are going to have that good relationship and customer service, and it'll be able to just build from there.
So I guess, Mike, just to reiterate, I'm not saying that I'm against the plan of the city taking over, because again, I think from a financial taxpayer asset perspective, I think it makes sense. My concern is voting on half of a plan, because we've got half of the plan, which is a financial plan, but we don't have the marketing plan. I think that you have ideas of what you want to do, but we don't really have a solid plan in place. And I think that that's my concern is making a premature vote when we don't have the entire package put in front of us.
And I can understand that. That wasn't something that we had asked for or expected from any of the previous proposals either. I mean, there may have been information that was put in there, but I wouldn't expect anyone to fully put out everything that they were going to do.
And that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yes, I would echo that concern, and knowing that we want to obviously have the airport fully operational quickly, that's what gives me a lot of concern on not having a plan of who we'd have in place, how we would do that, are things that concern me about it.
And I would agree with both of them, but with Mark's point too, it always seems again to me like, so we ask for the RFPs, we get them, and then after the fact, and I understand that yes, and why it's written up the way it is, that you can gain information and consequently that can cause you to create a plan. But here we are now being asked to accept a city plan that isn't really completely developed, I think. So concerns me.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Is there a time constraint on this being done tonight?
Well, the only time constraint, I guess, would be working on official hiring of employees, giving notice, getting them in sooner rather than later, acquiring equipment, working out any negotiated arrangements with utilities, with other entities, in being able to operate the FBO services sooner rather than later.
Can I have a quick clarification on that graphic up there? Cash balance over time. I can't really see a lot of the numbers up there, but is that saying if we went with a contracted service, our cash balance would be on a pretty steep negative trajectory? Now, where does it end up after 6 years at the bottom? What is that number? I can't read it.
Negative $530,516.
So that's where we'd be if we chose the proposal over the city-run service.
Based off of projections, and again, this is strictly what the impact is on the city, we'd be losing about $130,000 a year. Now, that's not adding in any tax revenues to offset, and that is looking at, under that proposal, an increase year over year of 50,000 gallons of gas per year, which equates to $6,000 back to the city.
Yeah, and I can fully grasp this, half a plan idea. It's not perfect. It's not what any of us expect to be in this position at the airport right now. But I think the numbers, at least at this juncture in time, have to speak volumes. I think we could probably, maybe, hopefully, work on a plan on the other half of this plan as far as marketing and all that, down the road. But if that is accurate, as best as we can get it, that's just not acceptable. I don't believe to the public and the taxpayer at this point in time. So I'm not sure we have a whole lot of choices, what I'm saying. I mean, if we do delay, what is it costing the airport fund right now to sit idle with no FBO out there? I mean, I guess that's what we got to kind of look at if we're going to delay this. I mean, we're losing revenue. We're not gaining revenue, obviously.
Well,
selling fuel.
Yeah. So Chris Cobbler has talked to some of the businesses out there to see where they stood on fuel and timeframes, and I believe Musco for one, I think was, I don't want to say good, but through Thursday was kind of where they were at, and they need to refuel or go somewhere else to fuel, and that was one of them.
It really wouldn't be good customer service if we're already delaying, 2 or 3 days right now.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes your hands are tied. Mm-hmm. So it is.
Well, it's a difficult situation to be in, but I think we're at a point where you need to give staff some direction. And so either we can take a look at the motion as it is presented. There is a motion made and seconded. You could vote it up, vote it down, or present something else. Are you ready to vote on the motion that's on the floor? Take the roll,
Do you guys need me to read it again?
please.
Reject all proposals received for RFP for fixed base operator services at the Ottumwa Regional Airport and proceed with assuming the operations internally. Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
No.
Councilmember Burke?
No.
Motion carries 3-2. Thank you for that discussion and deliberation.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing for the purpose of considering options for the nomination process for the selection of city representatives in the city of Ottumwa.
This is a open public hearing, so we have Christine on the phone. Christine, are you still there?
I am here, Your Honor.
Thank you. We expected you to have some presentation of what the Iowa Code allows us to do and give the council some overview. So why don't you take the floor, and then we'll go out of the public hearing after that.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So yes, Iowa Code Chapter 376 is the chapter which essentially outlines city elections. And in that chapter of the code, sort of the default provision is if a city has not by ordinance made another selection, then the city follows the Chapter 376 primary process, which is the process that Ottumwa currently follows. The city does not have an ordinance that chooses an alternative form of nominating candidates. So under the Chapter 376 primary process, it's essentially that a primary is possible, it's not required. The primary is only required where there are more than twice the number of candidates for the positions to be filled. The primary election is held 4 weeks before the regular election, and the highest two candidates for each office then become the candidates at the regular election. And then the winner at the regular election is the candidate with the most votes, and that person then becomes the office holder. Chapter 376 does allow a city to choose a runoff process in place of the primary process. So that's an alternative form that the city could choose to use. And if neither of those, are what the city wants to do, then you can either choose the Chapter 44, which is essentially the caucus convention process, or the Chapter 45 process, which is nomination by petition, or the city could choose to allow both of those procedures. You could allow nominations by caucus or nominations by petition, and you could choose to have runoff processes attached to either one of those or both of those. So there's sort of a combination of procedures that are available. If the runoff process is selected, essentially the runoff is held 4 weeks after the regular city election. A runoff is held where the positions remain unfilled because of a failure of a sufficient number of candidates to receive a majority vote. And then the highest two candidates for each position are included in the runoff election. There is a process that's outlined in the code for special charter cities. However, special charter cities are cities that chose that method of government prior to 1975. So you can't become a special charter city today. It's only sort of a grandfathered status for cities who had that form of government at that time. Under Ottumwa's charter, you have the mayor-council form of government, and your charter was adopted in 1982. So the special charter cities is not really available to you. So just to summarize, you currently have the primary process under Chapter 376. The city can adopt an ordinance which changes that. You could do the caucus convention process, which is Chapter 44. You could do the nomination by petition, which is Chapter 45. You could do Chapter 44 and Chapter 45, where candidates can be nominated in either fashion. And you can choose to have runoff procedures. And all of those can be identified by city ordinance. The only thing to keep in mind is that you cannot change the manner of election within 90 days of the regular city election. And since this is an odd year, 2021, there will be a regular city election at the end of the year. And so any changes would need to be made more than 90 days before the date of the election. So that's just a general overview. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Before we go to questions, Christine, I think it might be helpful for the general public. You might ask why we're even talking about this, and I think it should be mentioned that we had some citizen input and requests for this. This is not something that the council brought up, but citizens' input, and I want to be sure if there's anyone in the audience tonight that wants to address this, since it is a public meeting and a public hearing, we give them a chance to speak to this topic, and then we'll turn back to council for any questions to you or clarifications. So at this point, is there anyone in the audience that wants to address the issue of elections? I see somebody standing, so would you come forth and identify yourself, please? Sorry. Don't worry about it.
Thank you. My name is Mary Stewart. I'm a citizen, live here in Ottumwa, lived here for the last 42 years. And I'm here this evening to speak not only on my own behalf, but I also speak as a representative of the Ottumwa League of Women Voters, which is a local nonpartisan organization. I guess the main reason I'm here to speak, I'm not speaking in behalf of, in favor or against any of the options that are listed. But I do think that particularly at this point of time in history and in what's happening throughout our country, anything to do with elections and with voting is a matter of great seriousness and great consequence. So my only purpose in speaking this evening is to encourage the council and city leadership to please consider very carefully any decisions that we make regarding the nomination process. Excuse me. I think it's something that needs to be researched and studied, and perhaps that has already happened. But if it has, I am not aware of that, which is entirely reasonable. Actually, the most that I've heard about the discussion was in the Courier today. I've been out of town a couple of days and just happened to pick up the Courier this evening when I returned and saw that there were various options listed. In the past, the League has been instrumental in a number of discussions and decisions about various topics of interest in the city, and actually was very instrumental in helping to research and study what resulted in our present form of city government. So I'm not suggesting that League take that responsibility, but I am saying that, we are certainly going to consider the pros and cons as an organization. We'll encourage every other nonpartisan organization and every citizen to do the same, and that there would be a serious, deep and broad community discussion before we would consider any change in how we would go about nominating and electing city officials. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wants to address the council on this topic? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the renewal of a 5-year lease agreement with Musco Sports Lighting LLC for the south half of building number 23 at the Ottumwa Regional Airport, Ottumwa, Iowa.
Point of
Wait a
order,
minute,
Mayor.
I think we missed our,
Yeah, point of
There was
order.
no vote for that item.
No, but I think the mayor indicated that we would, as a council, have a chance to ask any questions.
questions.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I do have one, Mayor. I don't-
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Myers.
Well, and it's for our city attorney, Christine.
Can
Christine.
you hear Mr. Myers?
I can, yes.
Okay. My question is, with your experience and knowledge and what you've looked up, of all the cities in the state, does there seem to be a high percentage for any one of the suggestions or items that you mentioned?
So I did not dive too deeply into what, the most common or the statistics on that, but I can comment from my own personal experience. I have worked with a number of cities in the state, and I would say the most common method of election that I have seen is the petition process under Chapter 45 of the Iowa Code. I think that is the more common process because, it only requires one election. It's essentially, the candidates with the highest votes become the office holders. So it's relatively easy to administer. But that is just based on my own personal experience. I can certainly, come up with some more detailed statistics if that's something that you're interested in.
No, you've answered my question well. Thank you.
Are there other questions for Christine or staff?
I guess I would just make a comment that I appreciate what Mary said, and think perhaps partnering with League of Women Voters to study the issue further, to have more information might be a good avenue to go through. Obviously, we put out the call for public comment and we got one. So perhaps digging a little deeper before making what would be a really big change to how our city operates, I think would be important. We know that it's hard to get the word out on when to vote. I know numbers were low today, so at least when I counted earlier. So I think if we're going to make a big change like that, having a plan well in advance of that change to educate the public is going to be a critical step. And yeah, the election's a few months away, but that comes really fast. So it might be something we want to ensure we take our time. I appreciate the idea of looking at changing it, knowing that it could be a cost-saving measure or simplify how things go, which might be better for residents to use that process instead of the primary. But I definitely don't think it's something we want to make a rash decision on.
So I think, Christine, if I heard you right, it has to be done, if there is any change to be done, it has to be done 90 days before the next general election. Is that correct?
To become effective prior to that election, correct. If it's in that 90-day window, then the change will not become effective until after the election.
So why don't we, just for our own accountability, why don't we set that the council will continue to study this and review the pros and cons, and then take some action early summer, June, July. We could go up to August and still be within that window. So if that's okay, council, we could just agree with Councilperson Berg and study it further. Okay, thank you, Christine. Chris, now if you would go ahead.
Did she want to say anything else? Did she want to say anything else?
Was there anything else you wanted to add, Christine?
No, sorry, I was just saying you're welcome.
Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Chris.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the renewal of a 5-year lease agreement with Musco Sports Lighting LLC for the south half of building number 23 at the Ottumwa Regional Airport, Ottumwa, Iowa.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendations presented. Oh, excuse me.
That's public hearing first. Let's
Yeah.
let's go back. It's
Got me on
public
that
hearing. So Phil, are you going to start on that? Chris?
Certainly. So again, in the staff summary, just a refresher for anyone that's here to maybe speak, the public, council. On February 25th, 2016, City of Ottumwa and Musco Lighting entered into the 5-year lease agreement for the hangar at the Ottumwa Regional Airport. The agreement is scheduled to expire February 28th, 2021, which was a couple days ago. It did contain a renewal clause for an additional 5-year period under mutual consent. In general, the arrangement has been working well, and Musco has requested to continue with the lease. The only potential issue was identified during the current search for the fixed base operator, and the way the language is structured related to rent and fuel pricing. Musco has agreed to continue conversations as that FBO search is resolved. So not in the text there. Have reached out to Musco and let them know of the potential, what did happen tonight. And along with that, when you have the public operating the airport and doing the hangar leases and all of that, there is some language in regards to working with the FAA on non-discriminatory practices. And so I did highlight with them that we'll need to look at what that means for rental agreements with them and what that means for any fuel pricing with them. And so they have been made aware of that or the potential with tonight. The main thing is looking at making sure they have an agreement that they're operating under, and then we'll continue to work through any negotiated practices in the pricing to make sure that we're in compliance with FAA standards as well as them. And so they have been alerted to that. And like I said, based on prior conversations, an agreement to work through those conversations. And it's before you tonight because it is, the potential for a 5-year lease extension, and that's outside the 3 years. So it would need a public hearing, which we have now held, or we're about to hold, I should say, and then potential Q&A from the council.
Is there anyone in the audience that wants to address this item? Step up and identify yourself, please.
I'm Don Wasson. I live at 515 Indian Trail Road. I was curious about the terms of the lease that we're extending. Is it the same dollar value as it's been in the past, or is there a set percentage increase? And I asked some of that because I think Musco started renting this property 10 years ago.
The agreement that I had in front of me was 5. Now, I don't know if there was anything prior to that, but it's 5 with the option to extend 5, which is the 10.
Okay, thank you. But,
And it is under the same terms currently, but they have agreed to negotiate those terms and now will need to going forward here.
just out of curiosity, if we looked at the square footage that they're renting up and down, including the heated hangar, is it a comparable rate that's competitive with everybody else is paying?
Yeah, and so that is part of the non-discriminatory practices. We'll have to establish, a square footage rate, whatever that might be. So there'll be work that the airport board is going to need to do to kind of determine rates. It's something I've done in the past, other places where I've worked, and that we've had the same thing where it was usually based off of square footage. It might be a T hanger is X and a box hanger is something else, but there was still an established rate of what it was, typically based off of square footage, because that was easy enough to measure, calculate, and fare across the various options.
But at this point, you need to include the heated areas, the offices, upstairs and downstairs, as well as the floor spaces.
Right. Those are all the conversations that we'll have to have in establishing what the pricing will be, but it'll have to be consistent across. So if you're talking square footage, if there are multiple levels, that, like if you're buying a house, they count the square footage, first floor, second floor, and any other floors. We would have to do a comparable thing out at the airport.
So the agreement tonight is not a fixed price of anything. It's just agreeing to go ahead with pursuing it.
Yeah, the agreement tonight is a continuation of the agreement that was there, so that we'd still receive at a minimum that same amount of revenue that was previously there, and we provide the same service that we were previously providing under those agreements. Now with the city in that FBO role, that will help unclog some of the issues between city, FBO, Musco, but we'll still have to follow. We'll have to change things as far as rental fees because we can't discriminate one versus another. So it's going to force that conversation now with them regardless.
Good.
And get everything squared away with anyone else. And any future developments that we'd have out there, new hangars or anything to that effect. The other thing is looking at fuel sales and how that's affected. Now, I need to do a little bit more research on this as far as we may be able to have a tiered structure. The first, how many ever gallons is at this price? The next, how many ever gallons is at another price? So there may be some blending of things from our major fuel purchasers. I don't know if that fits within that. I have a feeling that it could within a non-discriminatory language. So if it's the first 50,000 gallons, it's we set it at 70 cents or $1.20 or whatever more. And the next 30,000 could be some other rate that's a little lesser. You see that sometimes in utilities.
But this particular thing only deals with the rental, and that should be independent of fuel prices.
Well, the agreement blended the two. And that was,
Should it be in the future? I would think not.
right.
Yeah. We can tailor make the future contract.
Yep. And so what is before us tonight is to renew what that was with the understanding that we are going to negotiate out those aspects, establishing, fuel prices, rental fees, those things separate as we move forward with the city FBO.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Don. Is there anyone else who wants to address this? Then I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Second.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Resolution number 53, 2021, authorize the renewal of a 5-year lease agreement with Musco Sports Lighting LLC for the south half of building number 23 at the Ottumwa Regional Airport, Ottumwa, Iowa. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 53, 2021.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Any questions for Phil or Kayla? I want to be clear now, you have had the discussion with Musco and they are understanding that there will be a renegotiation because the motion says a 5-year lease agreement. So I want to be sure that
Yeah, we need to keep that so that way we can still
Keep
collect
the
our
same.
revenue for this month and
Okay.
then we'll renegotiate.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Thank you.
Resolution number 8, 2021, approve change order number 10R in the amount of $61,613.04 for the Main Street Downtown Streetscape Reconstruction Project. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 8, 2021.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Good evening, Larry. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The downtown Main Streetscape project has been completed and change order 10R adjusts for alternate add items and quantity adjustment totals. Total contract amount includes private side water services. To date, the city has been reimbursed from property owners $41,623.86 and $3,643.27 has been applied to the owner's property taxes for a total of $45,267.13. The city is holding $190,934 until a solution has been agreed to correct the settlement of the permeable pavers. This is twice the amount based on contract unit price of the paved areas. Change order 10R increases the contract sum by $36,113.04 for quantity adjustments and $25,500 for fire services for a total of $61,613.04. The new contract sum is $5,302,787.23. And again, we have all the funding sources listed.
Any questions for Larry? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Resolution number 52, 2021, award the contract for the Woodland Avenue Reconstruction Project to Drish Construction of Fairfield, Iowa, in the amount of $857,279.65. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 52, 2021.
Move the recommendation as presented, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Holly. Go ahead, Larry.
This project consists of East Woodland Avenue reconstruction from Court Street to approximately 1,100 feet east. It includes complete reconstruction of the roadway, installation of new sewers, and adding of a new storm system on Green Street between Woodland and Fillmore, upgrades to the storm sewer system, and replacement of the sanitary sewer mains. This area is in Phase 8 Division 3D area and will be designed to allow the sanitary to be connected in the future without removing any of the newly installed street pavement. During design, a cross-country sewer was uncovered, which will also need to be replaced as part of this process. Easements and plats were developed for the existing cross-country sewer. The project is scheduled to take 75 working days with a late start of July 5th. Bids were received and opened by the City of Ottumwa on February 24th, 2021 at 2 p.m. The project was advertised on the City of Ottumwa and Master Builders of Iowa websites. 2 bids were received. The low bidder is Drish Construction, Inc. of Fairfield, Iowa, in the amount of $857,279.65.
Any questions for Larry? Any particular reason it's such a late start day? That's halfway through the summer.
Well, part of that is we have a lot of projects starting in the spring. We're kind of limited with our staff. We're down 1 inspector. So we've tried to string that out. We will work with that contractor if he wants to come in early. That might require us to contract out an extra inspector. We'll see. What you do typically is you look at your completion date and you back your working days up. That gives the most flexibility to the contractor and in theory gives you the lowest bid possible. That way, if a contractor looks at his schedule, he can look at all his jobs and say, all right, we're going from end date backwards.
Okay, very good. Any other questions?
Yeah, Larry, is that contractor also working on the Milner project?
That's correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hearing no other questions, take the roll.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Item J, if there's anything of public importance for the city council to be aware of, now's the time to step up. Don't see anybody moving, so. Communication, want to mention publicly that we do have several openings on our planning and zoning board and would like to encourage people to get an application into the city. It's on the website. It's a 2-page application, very easy to fill out. I'd like to get that done as soon as possible and get those commissions back up to speed. Secondly, I want to remind council that we will be doing city clerk's evaluation on the 16th after the regular meeting. And I'd like to ask that you get your evaluations in by the close of day on the 12th so we can total those up and go over them before we meet with her on the 16th. That's Friday night. I think that's all I have. Is there anything, Phil? Kayla? Any other staff? Okay, hearing none, I entertain.
Excuse me, Mayor, could I ask one thing? And
Certainly.
I hate to belabor, but just probably it's a yes or no, but back to the airport just a minute. As far as it being closed, isn't it true that customers that have a card can use the automatic so they can still get some fuel or not?
Yes,
Okay. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, any other questions? Council can ask anything they want. Okay, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
And I have 7:23. Thank you and good night.